Hello and welcome to North 100, a Canadian Highlander podcast. I'm Serge. Joining me today, I have a Jer
Hello.
and a Wheeler. Oh, indeed. Reminder that North 100 is brought to you by you with your support of the Patreon over at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Welcome to part one of our Midnight Hunt set review. Reminder that our set reviews are from the Canadian Highlander set review, so they are in no way exhaustive. We only talk about the cards that we think are cool and relevant to our format. Now, our set review also includes cards from the Commander precons because they are sometimes cool and good and not to be overlooked. Episode 1 today is going to include white and blue, and let's get right on into it, starting with Adeline Resplendent Cathar. This is a 3-mana star 4 legendary human knight for 1 white, has vigilance, and says Adeline's power is equal to the number of creatures you control. Whenever you attack for each opponent, which in our case is going to be 1, create a 1/1 white human creature token that's tapped and attacking that player or a planeswalker they control. Jer, your thoughts?
I really love the fact that this card always has 4 toughness. My biggest issue with these cards in the past is that they've been stars, and you could really goozle them with like a combat trick or removal spell in combat and often make these cards super vulnerable. But the fact that this card just always has a large booty is appealing to me, and it can get like really, really huge. And the fact that it has vigilance makes it even more of a menace. It feels its own ability. Yeah, I think this card is quite good and will beat many people, including me.
How do you feel about it in comparison to something like Brimaz?
Think it is likely not as strong as Brimaz on the aggregate, but there will be games where it is better.
Right on. All right, next up we have Brutal Cathar. This is a 3-mana 2/2 human soldier werewolf for 2 and a white, and reads, when this creature enters the battlefield or transforms into Brutal Cathar. What? This creature enters the battlefield
because it transforms back into Brutal Cathar.
Oh, that's what that means. I was like, how could it transform into something it already is? Exile target creature an opponent controls until this creature leaves the battlefield. It's a day bound, and on the other side, we've got the night bound, the Moon Rage Brute. It has first strike, ward of pay 3 life. Wheeler, what do you think?
Hey, Serge, what is daybound and nightbound? Very quickly.
That's a great question. So for those of you who've played the format, and by the format I mean Magic the Gathering from a long time, you've probably been playing since the original Innistrad. Daybound and Nightbound is a new mechanic, kind of like how werewolves worked in the past, but slightly different. And the important difference here is only the active player has the ability to switch it. So if the active player plays no spells, day switches to night, and when the active player plays 2 spells and it's night, it switches back. And then it's got some other rules about like how they come into play and they don't come into play. But it's going to be weird in our format because you're going to be able to play old werewolves and new werewolves and track those separately.
Yes, thank you. This card is probably all right because it's like we've received, look, it doesn't have the Fiend Hunter text. Right, in that it's a singular ability that change is long gone, so you're not doing any kind of ephemerate shenanigans with it. And even something like Skyclave Apparition from Zendikar Rising, which kinda has the old wording, just also hits everything. But this one is really easy to cast. Like, it has Ancient Tomb mana, I'm doing the hand thing, which is relevant because Death and Taxes typically will play, Ancient Tomb, but even go as far as using a point spread that also wants Mana Crypt and Soul Ring, or at the very least a bunch of Moxen, so accelerating into this card is, not that difficult to do. And then the human creature type means that if you have like a Mana Crypt, Cavern of Souls hand or something awkward like that, it can still touch down. And you're probably playing it in a deck that has mana sinks, be it equipment or activating your, keeping up mana to activate your Rishton Port or keep up instant speed activation for one of your creatures. So getting it to flip and then flip back even, not that difficult. It's not a massive ask. My only concern is that, it might just be card number 102,
Yeah, how many 3-drops do you want in your deck?
Yeah, especially for, mono white D&T or white X kind of aggro-ish mid-range. It takes a lot to show up and earn a spot, so... The card does a bunch of good stuff, and maybe in a monocolored deck or a green-white deck looking to tech this. But even then, I just don't know if it's better than its competition, you know?
All right, I have a quick flavor question.
Ooh.
How big does like a bow-like weapon need to be before a creature is required to have reach? Because this thing has a hand crossbow, but no reach.
Oh, great question.
I think that's just the offhand item that it uses for parrying that lets it land a visceral attack.
Yeah. Offhand parry doesn't quite count as ranged attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's more for stagger than for shooting down flyers. But good question, Jer. Good and important question. All right. Next up, we have Cathar Commando. This is a 2-mana 3/1 human soldier for 1 and a white. Has flash and sack the commando to destroy a target artifact or enchantment. Jer, what do you think?
I love it. This card has so much gravy on it that it's just a really good card. You can play it in so many decks. It gets in like all the Bant flash variants. It gets in tempo variants. You could play it in aggro if you're looking for another one of that effect. The fact that it has flash gives it a ton of added value against blue decks, and like its body is by far the most relevant against blue decks. Like a 3/1 is shockingly annoying for blue decks to deal with because they don't really want to use removal on a 3/1, but 3 power kills blue decks like faster than they would like, so they have to. So this card is sneaky good.
Yeah, like what an unassuming common, right?
Yeah.
The way that actually Nelson described it that has stuck in my head for the longest time was it's just a modal card of like destroy target artifact, enchantment, creature,
Or player.
or like player planeswalker, because you
Yeah.
can just flash and smack for way too much damage.
I like that. All right, next up, we have Fateful Absence. 1 and a white instant to destroy target creature or planeswalker, and its controller investigates. Jer.
This card is quite good, and by quite good I mean really, really good. It's going to see lots of play. It's better than Deck and Stone in the majority of cases. I mean, I imagine some decks don't really care about the instant speed or the planeswalker that much, but I'll find it hard to believe that Deck and Stone gets in over this very often. Just the fact that it's 2 mana, instant speed, unconditionally kills any creature or planeswalker. The investigate is like moderately annoying, but chances are it doesn't come up that early in the game anyways. And yeah, this card's amazing.
Awesome. Next up, we have the Intrepid Adversary, and there's a whole Intrepid cycle in all the major colors. It'll be fun towards the end of this to have a conversation of which one we think is the best, but I digress. Intrepid Adversary is a 2-mana 3/1 human scout for 1 and a white, has lifelink, and when it enters the battlefield, you may pay 1 and a white any number of times. When you pay this cost 1 or more times, put that many Valor counters on Intrepid Adversary. Creatures you control get +1/+1 for each Valorant counter. That seems good. What do you think, Wheeler?
Well, I love that. I believe the entire cycle is formatted in such a way that it's not on cast, or it doesn't have that if you cast it from your hand tag that we see occasionally for effects like this, meaning that if you flicker this with like an ephemerate, you could play it out early, just have a lifelink beater, and then maybe you get to save it from not only removal with your ephemerate or your blink spell, but also just get to pump extra mana into now pumping it and the rest of your team.
I didn't even realize this wasn't just retemplated multi-kicker. Holy crap.
Yeah.
The first time you Aether Vial this in mid-combat is gonna be juicy.
I'm sorry. Hold on. Can we just take a second to... What?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I almost felt a little bad mentioning Luris, because I feel like I do it just always. I can't shut up about that card, but this one I don't feel that bad. Maybe when we get to the black one and I say it for the second time in a single set review. But for this one, it's okay. Like, just being the fact that you can replay it off of a Luris or get it with an Unearth and then just pump a lot of mana into the ability.
And it pumps itself. Like, it gets itself out of some removal range.
Yeah. And then just sometimes like a 2-mana 3-power lifelinker will kill people. It's odd to say, but like a 2-mana 3/1 with lifelink can help outrun Tendrils of Agony like much more than a mana leak.
Or lightning strikes or Price of Progress. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like This is another card that's just really annoying for the red deck to deal with, because if they don't have a literal shock in their hand, it's super inefficient to deal with. Like either they go even on mana, which is a huge win, or you're trading with a creature and gaining life, which is also a huge win. So
I already thought these were good, and now with that revelation, I'm just like, oh no.
Yeah, I actually had a revelation with this one too, where over the weekend I was tooling Jeskai mid-range, looking at some of the really bonkers cards that this set has. And then I kind of had this moment of like, wait a minute, should I just be playing Intrepid Adversary if I'm a deck that has like Goblin Rabble Master and Young Pyromancer tokens and Poppet Stitcher tokens and whatnot? Because like, if it hits for 3 and gains me 3, brother, that's a lightning helix.
Yeah.
That's good enough for me.
Yeah, no kidding. Next up, we have the Lunarch Veteran. This is a 1-mana 1/1 human cleric for a single white pip, and reads, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. And it has another one of the new mechanics, Disturb. So Disturb is new, and I don't know, like Unearth or Flashback, whatever. You cast it for its Disturb cost from the graveyard, goes on the stack as its flip side, in this case as Luminous Phantom, and then if it would go into the graveyard, or basically you cast this from your graveyard transformed, believe a disturbed card, if it would go anywhere after that, it gets exiled, right?
Correct. Only if it would be put into the graveyard as Luminous Phantom.
Oh, you can bounce it or exile it, I guess. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
You can flicker it, you can bounce it.
So this is actually stronger than an Unearth in some interesting ways.
or if it gets countered, it goes back to the graveyard.
Yeah, it's more along the lines, I guess, of what is it, Aftermath? There was a conversation about this on Twitter from the people that made the mechanic, so I figured I'd throw it in there.
Sure.
But yeah, you play thing from graveyard. Hey, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on the one side, you have the Lunarch Veteran, 1-mana 1/1. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you gain a life. On the other side, you have the Luminous Phantom. Whenever another creature you control leaves the battlefield, gain a life. Wheeler.
Serge, you and I actually had an opportunity to sit down and talk Soul Wardens one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And so you saw firsthand the garbage I would play that had any kind of Soul Warden-esque text on it.
Yeah. There's not a lot of them, are there?
Oh, there's not a massive amount. And as recent as the Zendikar Rising set review, I say now that I realize that was literally a year ago, as recent as that, I jumped for joy over a new 3-drop that did this. Now we have a 1-drop. This is a soul brother. It's not a soul sister. It's a soul brother. And then it just has added grindy benefits by being able to flip, continuing to gain some amount of life, but also on a body that holds a GT just a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big fan.
Next up, Moorland Rescuer. This is actually one of the commander cards. So 6 mana 4/4 for 5 and a white. It's a human knight. And says when it dies, return any number of other creature cards of total power X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is Moorland Rescuer's power, and then exile the Rescuer. Wheeler, what do you think?
This might be a bit of a dated statement in 2021 because Thassa's Oracle exists and all that jazz. But I think that we have found a pretty solid upgrade to Angel of Glory's Rise for like a Hermit Druid or a Hermit Humans kill if you're wishing to stay within that realm instead of, Thassa's Oracle, just by the fact that this is a human.
Can we talk about the glory of Angel of Glory's Rise as well real quick?
Yeah, so Angel of Glory's Rise is a 7 mana 5/7?
7 mana 4/6.
I knew it was something goofy like that.
Very close.
Mm-hmm. It's from AVR, and when it comes into play, you get to return all humans from the graveyard to play, as well as exiling all zombie tokens, not zombies.
Yeah, zombies go bye-bye, humans come back.
Yeah, the important part of that isn't, getting your opponent's Diregraph Ghoul. Instead, it's that you get to return all of your humans, one of those humans presumably being Laboratory Maniac, and then another one of those humans being something like Hapless Researcher, or, some combination of humans that will be able to kill your opponent. You can use Blood Artists for the Hermit Humans kind of build, and the problem with that is that it was a 7 mana angel that you're never casting.
Okay.
And while you're unlikely to see yourself casting a 6 mana knight, 6 is typically you are a deck with mana accelerants already, and you're a deck that's looking for a whole bunch of non-basics, so you can't exactly include basics, which might lead you to having a Gaia's Cradle or something. And this card at least has some utility outside of I'm a giant unplayable angel.
So, real quick, the Angel of Glory's Rise, at least in the past, was a combo that involved looping the angel over and over, wasn't it? Or did they change it that you mill your whole library, resurrect the angel, it brings back Lab Maniac and a human that draws a card, you just win on the spot there? Just want to make sure that we're talking about the same combo. Not the one where Angels of Glory Rise comes into play, gets a Fiend Artist effect, tucks the angel, and then you sack the Fiend Artist, and then you like loop the angel coming back over and over.
Serge, my boy, that's a standard all-star combo right there.
Yeah.
I think it may have dabbled its toe in CanLander about a decade ago.
So what's the play pattern here for Moorland Rescuer? You reanimate it, and then you also need a sack outlet, and it brings back the Lab Maniac for the win there?
Yeah, typically you're a deck that has Cabal therapies. You're a deck that will have, you probably Dread returned this back, but if not, you have Dread Return. You have ways of sacrificing creatures either from your graveyard, but also from your hand in order to reanimate one target. And so you would get to bring this one back, which then you would have to sacrifice it and then get to bring at least 4 power worth of stuff. Notably, that 4 power can all be other humans. So we can pull, Laboratory Maniac being a blue 2 power human.
Well, this one doesn't require humans. The angel had to be human.
Yes, yeah. You can do it with anything. I'm just saying that if you're a deck that's looking to commit to this kind of kill, you are likely to be hermit humans. You are likely to want to take advantage of that. And so itself being a human just means that it has a little added utility and flexibility. But yeah, bring back a Labman to deck yourself. You could do, God, what was it? There's something with Champion of the Parish and looping, that Fiend Hunter-esque stuff. And then you just make this champion extremely large and it gets flung at your opponent.
I don't think that would work with this one, though.
Why is that?
This exiles on death.
No, you don't you don't Fiend Hunter this. You're effectively looping Fiend Hunters with like a Fiend Hunter with like a Banisher Priest with a Champion of the Parish in play.
Okay.
Doing like some circus act or a Benny Hill thing. And then you have Anger in the graveyard.
Does this see any play in Sandy B?
No. Yeah, it kind of has enough going on for it, but I think it's a bit too weak in general, but also we've got another treat later in the set review.
Oh, yeah. All right. Next up, we have the Search Party Captain. This is a 4-mana 2/2 human soldier for 3 and a white, but it says this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature you attacked with this turn. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. JR, what do you think?
This card is kind of interesting, but I'm not sure the decks that will be able to use the ability the best want to have the sort of variance attached with this card. It's very good when you're ahead and you're attacking, and it's the kind of card you want to play when you're ahead and you're attacking because it replaces itself and it applies more pressure, so it's like kind of a free roll. But if you're not ahead and attacking, it's pretty miserable. So I actually think this card might not see very much play just because it's high variance and it's only good when you're in a strong position already.
Next up, we have the Sigardian Savior. This is a 5-mana 3/3 angel for 3 white, has flying, and says when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, return up to 2 target creature cards with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Wheeler.
So this isn't exactly Rebel Arc in that, there's a couple of things going on for it, but anytime you see a flyer that ends up pulling 2 bodies from the graveyard to play, people either start screaming Rebel Arc or Celestial Gatekeeper, Legion's All-Star. And by people, I mean me, but I didn't do it for this one because a couple of things. The trigger for the ETB is on cast only.
Very important.
Which, the difference between this and the Intrepid cycle is that the Intrepid cycle is likely to not have an ability that makes it go infinite. And so it's understandable why that's on the card. The second one is that you only get to pull things for mana value 2 or less. Whereas with something like Rebel Arc, you basically get to cheat the system by pulling creatures with power 2 or less. but doesn't matter what their mana cost is. And so all those factors combined make me feel like if this is seeing play, it's only in very niche scenarios. And even then, like, I know that I will give this a shot in a Soul Sisters deck, like in a Martyr Proc deck, but I don't think it would even be worth it long term. Like, it's purely new toy syndrome. So I'd recommend not playing this. Don't be deceived by its good looks. It's no Revelark.
It's very pretty. Yeah, I can see a lot of people kind of glancing at it and being like, ooh, 2 mana value. You're like, cast? Sorry, what?
Yeah.
I wish it was power, not mana value. Then I'd be on board.
Yes.
Next up, the Stalwart Pathlighter is a 3-mana 3/1 human soldier for 2 and a white, has Vigilance and a Coven ability, which reads, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures with different power, creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. This is another one of the Commander Precon decks. Wheeler, what do you think?
I've been humming and hawing over this card. I think like 1 toughness on a 3-mana body has me scared to death. But Ancient Tomb mana Surge and Vigilance Surge.
Hold on, isn't there literally already a card that does this from like RTR block?
You're thinking Frontline Medic, bud.
Yeah, with Battalion, right?
Yes. Pulling Battalion out there.
So Frontline Medic is a 3-mana 3/3 from Gate Crash for 2 and a white. Battalion, when it and 2 other creatures attack creatures you control, gain indestructible until end of turn. And it has an activated ability to sack it to counter target spell with X in the mana cost unless they pay 3.
Yeah, unfortunately, Frontline Medic has not really made the grade for at least 5 years now.
Yeah.
The fewer Sphinx's revelations for it to eat up the fact that you have to attack with 3 creatures and, good cards existing, which might be one of the reasons why this card doesn't make play, because, good cards exist. But Coven, its ability, only requires you to have the creatures and not attack with them. And in a white deck or a white X deck, getting 3 different creatures with different powers is not exactly that difficult, especially when, you're probably not wanting to attack with your Mother of Ruins or your Giver of Ruins anyways. And giving your entire team indestructible, while this also just has Vigilance in case you want to trade it off with something else, on their attack, is a little enticing. Like, I'm willing to give it a shot in a very aggressive mono white deck, or maybe even a white X humans deck. But like, that ability is absurd, but getting eaten by Llanowar Elf is not. That's it. Yeah.
Next up, the Sun Gold Sentinel. This is a 2-mana 3/2 human soldier for 1 and a white. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. And Coven, so 1 and a white activated ability, choose a color. Sun Gold Sentinel gains hexproof from that color until end of turn, and can't be blocked by creatures that color until end of turn. And Coven, of course, means you must control creatures of 3 different power. Wheeler.
So a 2-mana 3/2 by itself is already a little bit above grade, although nowadays I feel like we're getting more and more of these. It's convenient having, some graveyard hate in a white deck that isn't just a complete sledgehammer that could affect everybody involved.
Yeah, that isn't just rest in peace, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's easy to cast. The single white pip is great. Love to see it. Coven as well. It's kind of a funny little wording on it too, because it's the hex proof from, but also the can't be blocked by. So it's almost everything that protection from would provide, but not. But I think it probably provides enough that I'm willing to give this a shot in, again, probably mono white or white. No, I think mostly mono white. Probably just mono white, Death and Taxes, or a white aggressive deck. I guess the hexproof means that you could potentially target it with your own spells as well while you have it out there, but I don't know. I can't see myself exactly playing this in a deck alongside Berserk, and that's saying a lot.
And the final white card today is going to be Sunset Revelry. 1 and a white sorcery. If an opponent has more life than you, gain 4 life. If an opponent controls more creatures than you get 2 1/1 human creature tokens. If an opponent has more cards in hand than you, draw a card. Jer, what do you think of this new timely reinforcements?
At first, I thought I liked it, but the more I thought about it, the less I liked it. So cards like Timely Reinforcements, you're putting into your deck for a specific purpose. They're a very feast or famine card. Like with Timely Reinforcements, you really want to jump through all the hoops you can to get both both parts of it. And your meta read is that both parts will be good. With this card, the draw card one seems good, but is sort of unlikely to come to fruition if the other two will. And I think you're only putting this card into your deck for the first two. So I don't really think this is better than Timely Reinforcements. And I don't think it'll see play. It's like a sideboard card that you can sort of put main deck, but I just don't think it has a big enough impact for our format.
All right, the first blue card we're going to talk about today is Consider, which I know a lot of people are excited about. It's a 1-mana instant for a single blue pip and says, look at the top card of your library. You may put that card in your graveyard, draw a card. What do you think, Jer?
There's nothing to consider. This card is good. It will see play in all of the blue decks. It's better than Opt, and I've been playing Opt in every blue deck for quite a while now. So
is the draw suite for every blue deck now 4 cards? Brainstorm, Ponder, Preordain, and Consider? Is that just like locked in stone now?
I mean, it's probably more like 10 cards, but
Yeah, at the very least, you're forgetting Serum Vision, Serge.
Look, Serum Vision was so expensive because of Modern for a long time, I kind of just forgot about it. I was like, oh man, $15 for an uncommon.
I mean, I went out of my way to not play Serum Visions because of how many times I played it in Modern, so...
So does that mean Consider's not good, or just my read on blue draw spells isn't good?
Oh, well,
like, is it number 4 or is it number 11?
Consider is good.
All right.
Yeah, I think it was more just that typically if you're playing the top 3, the Ponder, Preordain, Brainstorm.
Like, very few decks stop there.
Yeah. Like, I think we probably hit an era where a lot of people are also just running Git Probe kind of always, or at least depending on the deck, I guess. But as curves are getting, smaller and Murktide Regents are growing larger, it's pretty appealing. Sleight of Hand, Consider.
Opt's still good too.
Yeah.
Opt is still good too.
Oh, yeah.
I don't play enough Opt.
It's a very interesting thing to say, but you know what? I agree with you. Yeah, I don't play enough Opt either.
I'll make a little note to myself for the future. Next up, we have Drown in Dreams. This is an instant spell for X, a 2, and a blue, and says, choose one. If you control a commander as you cast the spell, you may choose both. Target player draws X cards, or target player mills X twice, and spoilers, this is one of the commander precon cards. Wheeler.
So I know people probably heard you read the line of if you control a commander and immediately turned off the podcast. But on the off chance that you decided to keep it on, I am shocked that this is, and I'm willing to say this, it is, what's the term that insufferable Magic people use?
Poggers?
Strictly better.
Thank you. Strictly better. It is strictly better stroke of genius in that it sounds weird because, well, it's stroke of genius. But, if you think about the decks that might want to fire off a gigantic draw spell, you're probably tapping a Tolarian Academy at some point in time.
Yeah, or High Tide or whatever, right?
Or Islands for 3.
Yeah. With Islands, it's a little bit easier. But even then, like, how often do you rely on your Blue Sun Zenith or whatever your kill spell for that deck might be? How often do you rely on it getting shuffled back in? Where this card can actually just beat out any kind of draw limiter as well, in that if there's if you have a pesky Narset Parter of Veils in play and you can't make them draw a whole bunch of cards, you can just mill them out. Shoot, if you can't draw a bunch of cards, you could mill yourself out and then cast a Yawgmoth's Will or cast a Past in Flames that you may have milled out. So yeah, it's easier on your blue pips. It does what Stroke of Genius does in that it's just, target player draws X. But the milling part is shockingly relevant. And the only umbrage I take with this card is that it's really hard to say no to the Stroke of Genius art.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
This art's pretty solid though.
It's really, Elena Richards knocking it out of the park with this one. And most of them, she does a lot of basically a lot of her artwork involve people getting caught up in some kind of wave or like motion. And hey, if you're good at it, keep on pumping them out.
But you're right. I'm sorry, I had to bring up the Stroke of Genius art here just to remind myself how good it is. Look at Karn in the background.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's Urza having a breakthrough, a stroke of genius, if you will, where my God, I got it. The world's saddest robot.
All right. Next up, we have Fading Hope. 1 blue instant, so a single blue pip. Return target creature to its owner's hand. If its mana value is 3 or less, you get to scry one. Wheeler, what do you think?
This is another card where there's the conversation that is mostly about art. Like, what's that thing insufferable Magic players say? Strictly better? Oh, and now hold on now. You're gonna have a couple of gorillas at your door if you keep that up.
Shots fired.
But Vapor Snag is one of those cards where it's like, look, I get it. You might unsummon your own creature. And with cards like Brazen Borrower, that might even be more true nowadays than ever before. But as someone that has unfortunately played so much unsummon and unsummon decks and decks with Word of Undoing. I mean, Word of Undoing was a strictly better unsummon from Ice Age already. And like, at the end of the day, the added text is negligible, and Vapor Snag is probably the better option. If you're only playing one copy of these cards, of any unsummon, you should probably play Vapor Snag. But if you're looking for more than one unsummon, and I'm talking 1 mana bounce a thing, then you should play Vapor Snag, Fading Hope, and a beta copy of Unsummon.
All right. Next up, we have Liar, Disciple of the Drowned, is a 5 mana 3/4 legendary human wizard for 3 blue. Says spells can't be countered, and each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard has flashback. The flashback cost is equal to that card's mana cost. Jer, what do you think?
I would like to proposition that this card go for instant errata to your spells can't be countered.
Now, what kind of a blue mage says all spells can't be countered?
More like Traitor, Disciple of the Drowned, am I right? Yeah, I mean, I can't get past the fact that it nullifies counter spells, so this card's dead to me. It's kind of cool. The second ability's good. I get it. But it costs so much mana, and I can't hold up Force of Will after I cast it, so...
I for sure thought a mythic 5-drop that let you play free spells and had the word counter on it would be right up your alley.
It's the opposite of counter, Ben.
It's Jer's least favorite words in Magic. Can't be countered.
I didn't get that far, and the card looked pretty bad.
I agree. Worst card ever printed.
Yeah, that's the North 100 promise.
Yeah, let's just get sad and move on then. Next up, we have the Malevolent Hermit. It's a 2 mana 2/1 human wizard for 1 and a blue. Blue pip and sack the Hermit. Counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 3. Then you can disturb it for 2 and a blue, and on the opposite side, you get the Benevolent Geist. This is a flying 2/2 spirit wizard. Look at that smile. And says non-creature spells you control can't be countered. Aren't those the words you like, Jer?
Now we're talking.
Yeah, and if it would be put into the graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Jer, what do you think?
Like, it feels like they mixed it up, right? Like the 5 mana mythic legendary thing should be the one that says your things can't get countered. But anyhow, this card's fine. Like, you're never going to get too much value with the onboard counter spell, but it might make them make some mistakes, and then the backside's pretty nice, but kind of costly. So all in all, I think this card's just like not quite good enough, but it's a cool card.
This card has Sutherland status written all over it.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah, I want to try it in blue-white tempo.
It's nice that, like, if you have to play it on 2, it at least does something, even if it is very like, hey, I'm out in the open, play around me, which can be a little tricky. But also, just if you're a deck that plays Thought Scours and Mental Notes and whatnot, getting it in the graveyard to then later cash in for a Happy Ghost is pretty cool.
That is true.
I don't even hate the play pattern of, as a tempo deck against like a really fast aggressive deck on the draw, playing it on 2, chump blocking an early attacker, just like trading for an early attacker, and then being able to bring it back as a flyer later on.
Mm-hmm.
Solid.
Yeah, I feel you.
Like, just the fact that it's 2 bodies gives you the card advantage that you might want in tempo. And although neither side is particularly exciting, the fact that you get 2 bodies in a tempo deck where you might run out of, just the longevity that it gives you is pretty interesting. All right, next up, Memory Deluge. This is a 4 mana instant for 2 blue and says, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast the spell. Put 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, and you can also flash it back for 7 for 5 blue. Jer.
This card is great. The front half is kind of surprisingly reasonable to cast. It's like not overcosted, which is what these like value flashback spells often are, and then it gives you some added value to the flashback, making it like a very good dig through time impersonation. which late game is very welcome. Yeah, I think if you decide your deck is in the market for 4-mana draw spells, this could be the one you play. It's possible Fact or Fiction is still better, but I think there's a reasonable argument for playing this instead.
Next up, Patrician Geist. This is a 3-mana 2/2 Spirit Knight for 2 and a blue, has flying, has other spirits you control get +1/+1, and another ability that just says spells you cast from your graveyard cost 1 less to cast. This is a lot of different words. Wheeler, what do you think?
Serge, this is my decree for the people, for the format, and especially all the online CanLander players that have usernames that are just spirit cards from Modern. I think that Spirits is Canadian Highlander playable. Mostly because I just got like 5 really good cards from this set.
Now, keep in mind, just getting good cards isn't good enough. You need a density of bad cards that you're replacing with good cards, right?
Sir,
Oh, Spirits has that in abundance, Serge.
yeah. I mean, truthfully, like, I think that there are enough lords and enough flash threats that when you play them alongside Counterspell and Swords to Plowshares, you are probably going to win matches of Magic the Gathering. Or at the very least, your opponents are going to play very poorly and you're going to win matches of Magic the Gathering.
So blue-white, or is there another color of spirit here?
I think blue-white by now. I remember trying Jeskai, which, you know, Strixhaven had some spirits in it, and maybe Jeskai ends up being fine, but like this card and some previous releases, it was mostly just white and blue. And you have a density of lords, you have better counter spells now, better removal, instant speed removal as well from white, especially ones that let you deal with planeswalkers like the Fateful Absence and whatnot. So yeah, I think it's all right. I think
the most difficult thing about that deck is going to be keeping track of which of your spirits fly and which of them don't.
Yeah, I imagine most of them, like, we're not getting to Kamigawa spirits.
Oh God, I forgot about Kamigawa. Don't tell anyone I said that.
You just did.
You're asking me to not tell. Who are you hiding it from, if not me?
Some of our friends from WotC.
Oh, Daniel doesn't listen. Don't worry.
Okay. Whew.
Blake does.
Blake does, though.
Oh no. All right. Cool. That's actually really exciting. And I had forgotten about like Lorehold being all spirit based as well. Yeah. Huh. Spirits.
I mean, I wouldn't take what I'm saying as word of God, but I think it's at least pretty close now. You can do it and not feel bad about it. And I think that's the qualifier.
Let's talk about Poppet Stitcher, which has already been making some waves. This is a 3-mana 2/3 creature human wizard. It's not even legendary, for 2 and a blue. And says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more creatures, you may flip Poppet Stitcher. On the other side, we have the Poppet Factory. It's an artifact and says creature tokens you control lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 3/3. And you can flip it back. Now, it's important to note that on both sides, it's a may transform. So Poppet Stitcher doesn't have to flip if you want more zombies, and the factory doesn't have to flip back if you want to keep the Anthem effect. Wheeler, what do you think?
Well, much like Jer said before the show, these aren't real zombies because they're decayed. So you're going to have to sacrifice them if you decide to attack with them, and they're not going to block. And as much as Young Pyromancer kills people by turning all the elementals sideways, it also stops you from dying by those brave little buddies getting in the way of a Thrag Tusk or whatnot. That said, this pitches to Force Will. Like, this one's blue. That's pretty big. Just having like a easy to cast, in I guess in that sense. Well, I mean, both are easy to cast, but having a blue like Pyromancer-esque effect that isn't Murmuring Mystic is appealing. Being able to just, alpha in, even with the 2s, but especially if you manage to get the transform to start pooping out 3/3s, or to turn everything you pooped out into 3/3s. Not to mention, it turns all creature tokens, so if you're playing this card, you probably are also playing, Young Pyromancer. You might find yourself with a Saheeli Sublime Artificer or anything like that. Those are also going to become 3/3s. And then you being able to toggle the switch to, fit whatever game plan you've got going on here. I think that this is a it's more, how do I word this without making it sound really basic? It's closer to a really good card than to not a good card. You know, like there are downsides to it, but this feels like the kind of card where you look at it and overanalyze the downsides when you should just be playing it and killing people with it.
I was going to say, I think there's some people who are really, really excited for this card.
Yeah, I've seen it do disgusting things in standard and modern, and I guess historic, but paper cards. And so that's kind of enough to make me go like, oh, yeah, you're right.
Like, you're not just slapping this into Blue Moon, like sleeving it up next to your young Peasy and going to town, eh?
I don't think so. Although, like, a lot of Blue Moon decks, at least locally in Victoria, like, these decks kill people now. Have you heard about this? They've been killing people.
Wait, hold on.
Murktide Regent's a hell of a magic card.
Murktide Regent, Dragon's Rage Channeler, Ragavan, like... It's wild how drastic times have changed from like, oh god, they have the Chandra, aka the aggro draw. Like they can start ticking up the Chandra and I'm gonna die.
Oh, not the 6-mana Planeswalker and I'm dead in 14 turns.
4 mana.
Oh, right.
Torch of Defiance.
It used to be that like the Blue Moon mirrors or just like any blue-red X decks would have the air quote peasy draws where they just had a Pyromancer on 2, you couldn't deal with it, and you lost the game. And now you have like 5 different ways to have your peasy draws, but also you just have better tools at dealing with that. So I think you should probably play this, is what I'm saying. And honestly, yeah, why not? Play it in Blue Moon, kill people dead.
Cool. All right. Spectral Adversary is here. This is a 2-mana 2/1. Oh god, it's a spirit. It's another spirit for 1 and a blue. It has flash, it has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you may pay 1 and a blue any number of times. When you pay this cost, put that many +1/+1 counters on the adversary, then up to that many other target artifact, creatures, and or enchantments phase out. Wheeler.
Well. Look who we have here. A playable spirit. Another one for old Ghosty. That's me. That's the new nickname I'm going for. What do you think?
Oh, I like it. Very, very on theme for Halloween coming up.
When's that happening this year?
I believe the 28th.
Okay, let me write that down. Shares a birthday with James. So I have played this card, but without that gigantic text box.
Oh.
And without that line that says flash. And then throw in can only block creatures with flying. And
so this is the best Welkin turn they've ever printed. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's wild. We're like, we have rattle chains. Like I can't stress how good Welkin turns have gotten over the past couple of years. I mean, the Welkin turn inflation is just, it's or Welkin turn power creep. It's the real, everybody's focused on Uro, and over here, I'm just screaming about how the birds can block now.
I'm actually so upset thinking of like the evolution. All right, dear viewer, I need someone to tweet at me like, what's that series of young adult novels of people who like polymorph Animorphs? I need like an Animorph of the Welkin turn turning into the Spectral Adversary.
Yeah, it has to go from like Sapphire Leech to Welkin turn to like Tattered Haunter into this or whatever.
Yeah, you could even throw it a Stormcrow at the start.
Yeah, it's a 2-power flash flyer.
Oh man.
Not that long ago, like blue-red tempo decks were playing like Dimensional Infiltrator.
Oh, I'm gonna need you to remind me what a Dimensional Infiltrator is.
Oh, right.
It's devoid, 2/1, flash flyer. You can pay some ability to do something relevant.
One in a wingding.
Yeah, so Dimensional Infiltrator, it's from Oath of the Gatewatch. 1 and a blue, 2/1 Eldrazi, flash flying, devoid, so it's colorless. Activated ability, 1 and a colorless. Target opponent exiles the top card of their library. If it's a land, you may return it to its owner's hand. It being the Dimensional Infiltrator. Ooh.
Fun fact, I lent somebody Flying Men once for an event, and it had this card in their deck, and they lost a match and came and complained to me. They're like, I can't pitch this to Force of Will. I got goozled because I thought I could pitch it to Force of Will.
Oh no!
And I was just like, that's what you're taking umbrage with after playing this deck?
The fact that it had 22 lands in it.
I think that was the 22. I think I realized 23 was too much, but 21 was greedy. 22 was right in the money.
Just right.
Yeah, it may be a bit too much even.
All right. Spectral Adversary.
Yeah, so I would have played this card if it was just a 2-mana 2/1 flyer that was a spirit. But then they added Flash, so that's great. And then they added this ability that lets you deal, not only make it larger if you draw it later, but also deal with, pesky permanents for at least the turn where they matter. And like Jer mentioned earlier, if I tap an Aether Vial and put this into play and then dump all my mana into that ability, or God forbid I float mana Gush and replay some lands into doing this, that's pretty gross. That's really gross. So yeah, I think the decks that would want the 2-power flying creatures at 2 are going to be extremely excited to see, the 2021 model.
Startle is a 2-mana instant for 1 and a blue and reads target creature gets -2/-0 until end of turn. Create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed and draw a card. That's a lot of words. What do you think, Jer?
It looks kind of appealing, but I could be undervaluing the Decayed zombies, but I still just don't think it's good enough. Like, if this was 1 mana, I'd do it. I'd be in. But like, how much value is a blue deck getting from a 2/2 that can't block and only attacks once? Like, that's not killing a planeswalker. It's not trading with a creature. It's dealing 2 damage. It's like target creature gets -2/-0 until end of turn. Shock. It's like a bad shock because it doesn't hit creatures. It hits a planeswalker or them, or gets chump blocked and you draw. Like, I just don't think that's good enough.
Right on. And the final card we're going to talk about today is the Suspicious Stowaway. This is a 2-mana 1/1 human rogue werewolf for 1 and a blue. It says can't be blocked, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, then discard a card. And it has Daybound. So if no spells are cast, it transforms into the Seafaring Werewolf. So I'm just picturing a werewolf pirate right now. The Seafaring Werewolf is a 2/1, can't be blocked. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, just draw a card. So no loot on this one. Wheeler, what do you think?
Why are you saying no loot like it's a downside?
That's fair. I guess the decks that want to loot are happy to loot. I often see draw a card as being superior to looter, but I guess in very specific cases.
No, you said no loot on this. Like just drawing a card was a downside.
No, I stand corrected. You're absolutely correct. For whatever reason, I was like, oh, you just draw a card. That's better.
All right, now convince him he was right the first time.
Now the heel turn.
Serge, it was really weird how you said that like loot was some kind of downside because no. So what if I told you Looter Core could block?
I'm listening.
I mean, already that's great, right?
I've played more Looter Core than most other people.
It's a fine card. It does the job.
Hell of a Rune Chanter's Pike holder.
Oh, man. Right. I guess specifically in the Rune Chanter's Pike deck, maybe the Seafaring Werewolf isn't as good.
What?
Wait, what do you mean?
See? There you go. Maybe drawing a card isn't as bad as looting. Ha!
So you don't want to loot?
Oh, God, I give up.
So contrary to what my co-hosts, or one of them at least, might lead you to believe, looting could be advantageous, especially if you're in a deck that has a lot of delve going on, or even, sometimes reanimator decks will want to jump this out. Probably not as much nowadays, unless your name's Robin Sorensen, who is just drunk off rotting Regisaur and Grave Titan, but we'll get, that's a different thing entirely. So you have a Looter Core that can block, and then if a deck that is just a bunch of god-awful creatures leveraged by broken cantrips and trading up with counterspells, if you can find time during your turn and in your heart to just pass, you get an Ophidian that hits for 2.
And is unblockable.
And the first thing I said when I saw this to myself was, oh my God, I can block something with Sophie? Like... just switching up the color makes it shockingly relevant as well. But yeah, this card it's kind of wild, like obviously it's not that out there as far as modern day stuff goes, but it's just kind of like oh yeah, they threw a bone to this style of card and it looks great.
Yeah, like this is one of those cards where if they showed it to us like 10 years ago, we would have laughed and been like, oh yeah, nice like Robo Rosewater card.
Yeah.
But these days it's like it's only pretty good, but like I love this card. This is probably my favorite card in the set.
I like it a lot.
Cool custom card, dude. Anyways, I'm 2 off threshold from my Nimble Mongoose, so that's game. Like, yeah, it's I expect myself to play quite a bit of this,
Yeah.
and I think that it will similarly find home in decks that want to slap a Curious Obsession on things, or pair Blue Evasion with Lightning Bolt or equipment. This feels very much like a U card as well, Serge.
It really is. It absolutely is, even though it doesn't loot on the backside.
So
cool. So that's going to do it for episode 1 of our set review. Tune in for episode 2, where we're going to talk about black, red, and green cards. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. Some of you, aka a lot of you, in the comments have been wondering when the next in-person CanLander content is going to happen on the Loading Ready Run channel or the LRRMTG YouTube channel. I got good news for you, because on October 1st, in a COVID-safe manner, there's going to be Wheeler versus Serge in a modified, unified 3-hour slugfest. Wheeler, you want to give a little bit of detail on the deck building, what we're looking at for that?
Yeah, so long story short, Serge keeps beating me in tournaments, and I want my revenge finally.
100% the truth.
Sorry, wait, I had that the other way around.
Oh, no.
And so basically, each of us is going to bring 3 different decks. And across these decks, we're only allowed to have a single copy of any given card. So for instance, if I have Lightning Bolt in one of my decks, in the deck I'm going to play before the first commercial break, I can't have Lightning Bolt in the other 2 decks.
What about Flooded Strand?
Same with Flooded Strand. But Serge can have one. Serge is allowed a Lightning Bolt and a Flooded Strand as well, but the same thing. So basically, you would have to, aside from points, right? You're allowed, each deck gets the maximum of 10 points. But aside from that, you would basically have to be able to load all of these decks together and then play them as a single CanLander deck.
Ooh.
If that makes sense, which could be the 4th and final bonus round.
So the main reason we're doing something like this instead of the usual Canadian Highlander tournament we're having is because, of course, there is still a pandemic happening, and we're trying to minimize the number of people in any particular event. So yeah, it's just going to be Wheeler and I jamming Magic for 3 hours.
Mm-hmm. And Paul's going to be on.
Yeah.
Paul on the board, feeding all the cards in your hand to me.
Wait.
Through a complicated series of hand signals.
So yeah, October 1st at 5 p.m. Pacific over at the Loading Ready Run Twitch channel. So check that out. Or, of course, on the LRMTG YouTube channel, because Heather does a wonderful job of getting the VODs uploaded to that. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to part 1 of our set review. We appreciate you. If you think we missed any cards, if you want us to just talk about Magic in general, hit us up in the comments down below. We love to read them. Reminder, this podcast is brought to you by you with your support of the Patreon over at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.